Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, going to be breaking down the Week 6 Thursday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings for the Commanders and the Bears. Not the best game this Thursday night. I have not looked at the schedule for the rest of the season for the primetime games, but my guess is that this is probably the worst primetime game that we're going to have all season. This is going to be a sloppy, very low-scoring game. Right now, the Bears, they're slight favorites in this game, and this total is sitting at 37.5, which is probably like one of the lowest totals we're going to see all season. Not the best one, I'll be honest, but we're gonna talk through this showdown slate. I'm still gonna be playing this showdown slate. I'll have some entries in on Prize Picks too. I couldn't imagine watching this game without having some sort of action. Unless you're like a diehard Commanders fan or a diehard Bears fan, like there's no way that I could watch this game without having money on the line. So I'm going to be playing something, but I'm not going to be heavily invested in this game just because it's such a gross one. But yeah, guys, we'll talk through this showdown slate like we always do. We'll go kind of from top to bottom, talk about all the playable options, all the guys that I do have interest in. Real quickly, though, hit that like button if you guys do enjoy these showdown videos, and if they do help you, hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And also, if you are new here, be sure to check out the sponsor of this video, Prize Picks. So Prize Picks is a player prop-based DFS site. Very simple, very easy to use. You're just taking the over or the under. You're taking more or less on a player's projection. Prize Picks does already have stuff posted for Thursday night's game. If you want to take a look at some of the props they are offering, they also have stuff posted for Sunday. And I know Prize Picks does they get their props posted early. Like they get them up even before the sports books do. And there can definitely be some, good lines to take advantage of. Some of these lines can be, too high or too low one way or the other. So definitely take a look at all that Prize Picks is offering. Obviously, as we get closer to Thursday night, as we get closer to Sunday, there's going to be a ton of more props available you can choose from. Again, you're just taking more or less on a player's projection if you have a lean one way or the other. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 5 picks, and you can win up to 10 extra money on Prize Picks. Definitely check them out. Use code NOAH. Get that deposit bonus when you do sign up. And as always, I will be sharing probably 2 plays I like for this Thursday night game. It's going to be a tough game to find good props to take, but I will still be sharing 2 plays I like for Thursday Night Football. I'll be sharing those probably in a separate video I'll post on Wednesday. So definitely check out that Prize Picks video on my channel if you want to know some plays that I like for this game. But let's talk about this showdown slate. Let's start off at the top of the player pool. We'll hit on the quarterbacks first. You got Carson Wentz as the most expensive option on this slate. He is $10,600, and then you have Justin Fields, who is $10,000. I think both quarterbacks are pretty solid options here, and I'm not saying that I'm expecting either quarterback to put up a big game, but I think quarterbacks are always going to provide you high floors, and I think in a game like this that's going to be sloppy and low scoring, if the quarterbacks put up like 15 DraftKings points, that might be enough for them to make the optimal lineup. Just because I don't think we're going to see a ton of points scored in this game. I don't think we're going to see a ton of guys putting up huge games. So I'm fine going to Carson Wentz here. I think he's definitely in play on this showdown slate. I could even see playing him at captain. I normally don't play quarterbacks at captain, especially a guy like Carson Wentz, but we have seen Carson Wentz put up some big games this year. I mean, he had over 30 DraftKings points the first 2 games of the season. I know those were different matchups, and the Commanders had to throw a lot in those games. But I think Wentz does offer some upside. And I think when you look at this slate and how gross it is, Wentz, in my opinion, is still one of the top projected options. So I'm definitely interested in Carson Wentz. And Justin Fields, he's someone that I really haven't played at all this season. He's not even been in my DFS lineups for the main slate. He's just not been good for fantasy this year. He did have his best game of the season, at least for fantasy, last week against the Vikings, put up 17 DraftKings points. Justin Fields does always offer good rushing upside. I mean, you can look at his box score and see 8 carries for 47 yards, 7 carries for 52 yards. That does make him appealing for fantasy. But man, the Bears, they're running the ball as much as possible. They're barely letting Fields throw. We have seen his pass attempts go up a little bit the last few games. He has thrown the ball over 20 times in back-to-back games. But you're not going to get 35, 40 pass attempts from Justin Fields like you potentially could get from Carson Wentz. I think this is probably a game where Carson Wentz is unlikely to throw that much. But we at least have that on the table where that is literally that's not even on the table for Justin Fields. So the pass volume is definitely a concern, but the rushing upside still puts Fields in play for me. I do prefer Carson Wentz if I had to pick between one of the 2 quarterbacks, but I think on this slate specifically with how gross the options are, both quarterbacks are going to make my player pool. And then you have David Montgomery sandwiched in between them. So David Montgomery last week didn't make his return from injury. He wasn't great against Minnesota. He had 12 carries for 20 yards. He was not very efficient, but he did get into the end zone. He did also have 4 catches for 62 yards. I want to take a look at his snaps last week. So he did play on 72% of the snaps in his first game back from injury. He pretty much had a full workload. They didn't really limit him too much. He got 16 touches. He just wasn't very efficient. Now, looking at the Commanders so far this season, like against the run, they've kind of been like around middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. Same with like rushing yards as well. I don't think it's like the best matchup for David Montgomery, but he's got a pretty high floor. He's getting the volume. With how much the Bears want to run the ball, David Montgomery is going to get like 15 touches at least as long as he stays healthy. Khalil Herbert was really good when Montgomery was out, but now that Montgomery's back, they seem inclined just to give Montgomery the workload. So Montgomery's in play. I do prefer the quarterbacks on this slate, but I have no issue going to David Montgomery. And then you have some of these receivers. So you got Terry McLaurin at 9K. You got Curtis Samuel at 8,200. I think both these Commanders receivers look like solid plays. Terry McLaurin has definitely not been great this season. He's definitely not performed to the expectations that I think a lot of people thought he would. Obviously, he's had some big years in the past, but so far this year, it's not been great for Terry McLaurin. He hasn't seen like great volume. He's actually not even leading the team in target share. It's Curtis Samuel that has seen the most targets for the Commanders this season. Terry McLaurin is second on the team in target share. He's seen 33 targets, whereas Samuel has seen 45. So Curtis Samuel has kind of been like the number one option for Carson Wentz. I still think that Terry McLaurin offers big play upside and is a guy that can put up a big game any slate. He has a lot of upside. He's a really talented receiver. But man, Carson Wentz he's locked into Curtis Samuel right now. I mean, you look at Curtis Samuel's targets, 11, 9, 10, 7, 8. Like, he's getting very good, consistent volume. The DraftKings game log is good as well. He is one of these guys. Curtis Samuel is one of these guys that he runs a lot of low A-dot routes. So he runs a lot of quick routes, a lot of slants, out routes, stuff like that, which allows him to rack up a lot of catches. I mean, you look at his receptions, 8, 7, 7, 4, and 6 receptions. That makes his floor really, really high, especially on DraftKings with the full PPR. Getting receivers that can catch 5, 6, 7, 8 balls almost every week is going to make their floor really high. And there's definitely a ceiling for Curtis Samuel as well. We've seen Curtis Samuel get plenty of opportunity in the red zone. We've seen them even give him some carries at times. I think both Commanders receivers look like solid options here. I think Samuel probably has the higher floor for ceiling. If out of all the, between Samuel and McLaurin, I think McLaurin's more likely to get like 100 yards and a touchdown, whereas Samuel, I think, is more likely to get, if you need someone to give you 12 DraftKings points, I think Samuel's the best bet. If you're looking for upside for GPPs, then maybe you go to McLaurin. But yeah, I think both Commanders receivers are definitely in play here. Now, Antonio Gibson, he's a guy that I'm a little bit concerned about. So last week, Antonio Gibson was barely involved. He only got 6 touches, and he played on his season low snaps. He only played on 32% of the snaps last week. The Commanders basically ran a 3-headed committee at running back. J.D. McKissic led the running back crew in snaps played. He played 41% of the snaps. Antonio Gibson played 32%, and Brian Robinson, who made his NFL debut, he played 29%. So this is a tough situation. Now that Brian Robinson's active and playing, it seems like they want to give Brian Robinson some opportunity. So I expect Brian Robinson to be involved. We know J.D. McKissic is going to be involved as well, more so on passing downs. That's going to hurt Gibson. I still think Gibson probably gets like the goal line work, so I think he still has like chance to get a touchdown, but I don't expect him to put up, massive volume here. I would be surprised if he sees more than like 16, 17 touches. You're going to need him to be really efficient with his touches or just get into the end zone. I think with the concerns about his workload right now, I think that is going to keep his ownership very low. I do expect Gibson to be a pretty low-owned option on this slate, so if you're playing large field tournaments and you just want to take a shot on Gibson and just hope that he breaks off a long run, or if he gets into the end zone, you could do it. But I do want to mention, he was not involved much last week, and it seems like now that Brian Robinson's active, that's really going to hurt Gibson. Definitely a concern that Gibson only played 32% of the snaps. But then you got some of these other guys. You got like Darnell Mooney at 7,600. Now, Darnell Mooney, he started off the season doing absolutely nothing. He was barely involved, was barely getting targeted. The last few weeks, though, the targets have started to increase for Mooney. Last 3 games, 6, 5, and 5 targets. He has been the number one option for Justin Fields whenever the Bears throw the ball. Worth mentioning that the Bears rarely throw the ball, but still, Darnell Mooney does have just around a 25% target share this season, which does lead the Bears, all their pass catchers. He's been the number one option for Fields. And, if Fields does have somewhat of a decent game passing the ball, that probably means Mooney is going to be a big beneficiary. And, man, we've seen Mooney make some big plays. He had a great catch last week against the Vikings. It was a one-handed catch. Like, I think he is a really talented receiver. If he was in a different offense, like if he was on, I don't know, the Chiefs or the Bills, like Mooney would be a great fantasy receiver. But I think because he's in this Bears offense and the Bears are just so bad, it really hurts Mooney's upside, and just, his floor is really low. But if you think that Justin Fields can actually, if they're going to be able to move the ball down the field here, which they might be able to. I mean, Washington's defense, especially like against the pass, has been pretty bad this year. Washington has allowed the third most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers this season. They've given up, like, in terms of touchdowns, they've given up the second or third most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So, like, I think it's actually a good spot for Fields and Mooney. I'm kind of interested in Darnell Mooney here. I think he does have upside. I think he's always a threat to break off a long catch, to maybe potentially break off a long touchdown. And he's only 7,600. Like, he's not super expensive. On this slate, we're just kind of searching for guys that have upside, and I think Mooney does kind of fit that build. So, yeah, I do like Darnell Mooney at 7,600. He's definitely in play for me. And then you have the other two Washington running backs. You got Brian Robinson at 6,600. You got J.D. McKissic at 6,400. I think these guys are just overpriced for their roles. I mean, Brian Robinson last week, again, played on 29% of the snaps, but he only got 9 carries. He wasn't very efficient at all. I think he's going to get some opportunity, but I don't know if he gets enough touches to be worth rostering at 6,600. In my opinion, he's just kind of like a large field GPP play. You're just kind of throwing a dart and then hoping that he gets a touchdown or something. He's definitely going to be very, very low owned. He's just kind of like a low owned dart throw, in my opinion. He's definitely overpriced for his role. J.D. McKissic, I could maybe see rostering just because J.D. McKissic does get a lot of usage in the passing game, and on Draftkings, we've seen running backs be able to put up big games just from catching a lot of passes. There was a week, I think it was last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, Leonard Fournette, he had literally 3 carries for negative yards. Leonard Fournette had negative rushing yards and still scored like 18 Draftkings points because he caught like 7 passes. He had a receiving touchdown. Like, J.D. McKissic is one of those guys that can get 6, 7, 8 targets. They're primarily just going to use him in the passing game. He didn't even get any carries last week. But if he does see 6, 7 targets, if he gets 5 catches for 40 yards and maybe a touchdown, like at 6,400, he could make the optimal lineup. I definitely think McKissic's also overpriced for his role. But if I had to choose between one of him or Robinson, I think I do lean Robinson. If you think this is a game where the Bears are playing with the lead, that would definitely benefit McKissic because McKissic's going to be more involved when the Commanders are trailing and they're throwing a lot. I don't know if that'll be the case this week. I think this is going to be a close game, and I think it's going to be low scoring. I don't see this being a game where Washington gets down and they have to throw a ton. But obviously that type of game script would benefit McKissic. I do think McKissic and Robinson, though, they're just like low on plays on this slate. They don't really stand out. Same with Khalil Herbert. Now that Dave Montgomery's back, I mean, you can't really go to Khalil Herbert. He only got 4 carries last week. He's 6,200. He's just too expensive for his role now. He's just going to be the backup running back. Probably gets 5, 6 carries. Just not worth rostering. So let's talk about some of the potential value on this slate. The value's kind of thin. There's nothing down here that you're going to feel great about. We'll have to keep an eye on some question marks for Washington right now. So both Jahan Dotson and Diami Brown did not practice on Tuesday, and I'm making this video on Tuesday night. So we'll have to monitor practice reports on Wednesday and see if these guys want to play in. Jahan Dotson was out last week, and we saw Diami Brown be a big beneficiary. He had a big game, albeit on just 4 targets. He did have 2 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, by far had the best game he possibly could have had with 2 catches. I mean, putting up 27 Draftkings points with just 2 catches is obviously, running really hot. But he did play more snaps than he has played all season last week with Brown out. He played 32% of the snaps. Definitely benefited with Dotson out, So if Dotson sits, like maybe we could go to Brown, but like DraftKings did price him up to $5K. If Dotson plays, and I think Dotson at 5,600 is actually kind of interesting for value. He has been consistently involved in this Commanders offense. He played last week, or not last week, but the week before, he played 59% of the snaps. So far this season, he's been playing a good amount of snaps. He's basically been their wide receiver 3. But they've been running like a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So you're seeing, Dotson, McLaurin, and Samuel all play a lot of snaps. So I think Dotson's going to be on the field a ton if he plays, assuming he's healthy. And he's been heavily involved, or not heavily involved, but he's been decently involved so far in the games he's played. 5, 8, and 4 targets. He's been a touchdown scorer. He's scored 4 touchdowns already this season. If he's active, he might be one of the better value plays on the slate at just 5,600. I do have quite a bit of interest in Dotson. If Dotson doesn't play, then we could look to Diami Brown. Do want to mention, we'll talk about Cam Sims in a second. He also saw a big boost in snaps last week with Brown out, or with Dotson out. But then you got a guy like Cole Kmet who's just really done nothing this season. He's barely been getting targeted. He has seen his targets also increase a little bit the last few weeks, but I think a lot of that is due to Fields throwing the ball a little bit more. I think Kmet is likely to be kind of the number 2 option for the Bears behind Darnell Mooney. Kmet's a decent tight end. He's a good receiving tight end. It's just, the Bears, their pass offense, man, it's been so bad that like none of their pass catchers have done anything this season. So I don't feel great about Cole Kmet, but he's at least playable. He's going to be on the field a lot. I mean, last week Cole Kmet played 90% of the snaps, 98%. He's playing like 90% of the snaps every week. He's going to be an every down tight end. It's just, what are we going to get from Justin Fields through the air? That's the biggest concern. We just don't know how much Fields is really going to throw the ball. I think Mooney's a guy that, even if Mooney gets 4 targets, he could put up like 100 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets, whereas Cole Kmet's obviously very unlikely to do that. But let's talk about some other options. You got, Equanimous St. Brown's at 4,800. He's not really been a consistent involvement. He's not really been consistently involved in this Bears offense, but he does have the 2nd highest target share on the team this season for what it's worth. Again, he's probably just going to see like 3-4 targets, and at 4,800, he doesn't really stand out, but the value is so bad on this slate that like he's at least playable. I think the kickers are some of the better values. Like kickers, they seem to be some of the better values every showdown slate, just because a lot of these cheap options you don't really ever feel good about. And I think this is one of these games where the kickers are definitely going to project well, at least for value. And I think the kickers, in low-scoring games, kickers tend to do better in those. A lot of times, like if you see shootouts, a lot of times there's going to be like cheap receivers or a cheap tight end that puts up a good game in a shootout. Whereas like in a low-scoring game like this, it's a lot more likely that the kickers, the 8 to 10 points you get from the kicker, that's probably going to be good enough because a lot of these guys down here are not going to even score 8 to 10 points. So I'm fine playing the kickers here. I think the kickers do look like pretty good values. The defenses I also don't hate. I tend to avoid defenses on showdown slates because they do come in way overowned, and defensive scoring is so tough to predict. Even though it is a good spot for the defenses, like these defenses could put up 4 points and I wouldn't be surprised. But the Bears at home here, against Carson Wentz is definitely interesting because Carson Wentz is a quarterback that will take a lot of sacks. He'll definitely turn the ball over as well. The Bears are playing at home too. I'm fine with the Bears defense. I think the Commanders defense is also viable. I mean, Justin Fields is not a guy that's scared to turn the ball over. He'll definitely take sacks as well, turn the ball over, throw interceptions. So the Commanders defenses I think is fine too. I wouldn't go too crazy on the defenses here, but I don't think I would exclude them from my player pool like I normally do. If I was playing multiple lineups, I think I would have exposure to the defense at least a little bit. Don't think I'd be like super overweight though. And then the rest of these like cheap options like John Bates, I mean, he was involved a little bit last week because Logan Thomas was out. So we'll have to keep an eye on Logan Thomas' status. He's another guy that's questionable heading into this game. I believe he did not practice either on Tuesday. So if Logan Thomas doesn't sit, you do have John Bates at just 3K. And John Bates did play on 59% of snaps last week, saw 3 targets. At 3K, he's going to be a playable value. If Logan Thomas plays at 2,200, like he might be one of the better value plays along with Jahan Dotson. I mean, Logan Thomas hasn't done much this season, but 2,200 is really, really cheap for Logan Thomas. I mean, he's going to be close to like an every down tight end if he's healthy. So far in the games he's played, 62% of the snaps, 73%, 65%, 74%. He's going to be out there a lot. He's going to run routes. 2,200, I definitely like Logan Thomas for value if he's active. So we'll have to keep an eye on the Washington tight end situation. If Thomas plays, I like him a lot. If Thomas is out, I think you could go to John Bates at 3K. And like that's probably it. Last guy that I'll mention is Cam Sims. So Cam Sims did play on 59% of the snaps last week with Dotson out. He only saw 2 targets, but he did get a big boost in snaps. So he's probably going to be on the field more if Dotson is out again. Don't think that Cam Sims really offers much upside, but he's going to play probably 40-50% of the snaps, and he's only $1,400. So I also wanted to mention him as kind of a punt play, but I think right now when you're looking for value, assuming Dotson plays, I think he's a good option at 5,600. I do like the kickers a lot, and then I also think that Logan Thomas at 2,200, if he plays, is a really good value. But that's it for the showdown slate, guys. I think that's everything that we can really discuss. I mean, there's other options down there that I didn't really hit on, but like I'm not gonna play any of these other guys. I don't think so. Yeah, I think that does it for this showdown slate. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it helped. Hit that like button if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. Check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. Make sure to sign up for PrizePicks. Use promo code NOAH. Check out the player props that PrizePicks has available for Thursday night. Be sure to check out my video as well that I will upload probably sometime on Wednesday. I'll be sharing a couple plays I like for PrizePicks for this Thursday night football game. Definitely check out that PrizePicks video when I do upload it, probably sometime Wednesday. But as always, guys, appreciate you watching these videos. Appreciate you supporting the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope it did help, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Best of luck tonight. Peace.